We're going to build a better world. Now we're going to be discussing Uber and Lyft, and there might be some other ones as well. But Uber and Lyft are basically social sharing for a ride, or I guess ride sharing is really what it is. There's a rise of another generation that doesn't like cars. About, 5 years ago, I predicted that probably as much as a third of millennials in the US would not own cars, or would not have very much interest in owning cars throughout their 20s. And I remember at the time, there were a lot of auto executives that I reached out to, and they were not interested whatsoever in what I had to say. And part of what I was making a case for was auto companies would be wise to invest in some alternatives that they can still make some money through, let's say, investing in maybe things like Uber or Lyft. And of course they ignored it, and now all of a sudden people are seeing that these are actually fairly popular services. There is one thing I want to note here. I don't care about the controversy in the media about these companies. The media, usually the people who write bashing one or the other company or both or whatever, have a financial interest. Never ever believe for 1 second in your life that they really are talking about controversy. They've just figured out which topics to use to get people to dislike or like one service or the other. So I don't care if you don't like it or not, it doesn't matter to me. Also, the other thing too as well is when governments try to ban this, there's some friends of mine who live in a city where these services are banned. Well, actually what it did is it gave the young people an idea, and so now they have their own black market social sharing site. That's a problem because the government can't tax anything that's black market. So that was kind of stupid. But don't ever underestimate the stupidity of governments. If you try to ban something and young people don't want to own cars, and it's obvious why governments want to ban this, is because then young people won't own cars and they make less money. Well, the problem is that young people will find other ways to do it, and then the governments will make even less money. So it's kind of like taxing, drugs, the drug war. It hasn't prevented people from doing drugs. It's just prevented the government from making lots of money. So the thing about Uber is that it rewards millennials in that there's a lower demand for oil. Millennials who live in cities or communities may only need to use social riding once or twice a week. It's more money in their pockets. Think about it. Owning a car, this is for people who buy used cars. I'm not talking about people who borrow money, but owning a car can cost up to $250 a month when you consider gasoline cost. Let's say gasoline costs are, let's say hypothetically $120. So you have $130. Then you have a car insurance. Okay, let's suppose your car insurance is $70. Okay, so that's 120 to 70, 190. And then maintenance costs spread monthly. Usually annual maintenance, over the course of the car's lifetime, is going to be about $60 a month. Actually, it could be more. It depends on the car ability. If you get a good car, one of the things you'll know is the parts are cheap, and so you can usually get a pretty good deal. But if the car that you get, the parts are expensive, like a BMW or Audi or these cars, which will cost even more than $250 a month with car insurance, the parts are going to be really expensive, and you're going to pay out the wazoo. So, but imagine using Lyft or Uber twice a week for a total cost of $25. That's $100 a month. That means that person is basically banking $150 extra, right? And you can see this as well. They have these communities that I've pointed out that millennials like to live in, where you have like businesses on the bottom, where you have stores and supermarkets and stuff, and then on the top of those are housing. And millennials like to live in these little communities. They love it. Well, if you live in one of those little communities, you only will need to occasionally go outside of that community and drive out of that community, maybe once a week or twice a week. Also, I didn't even think about this, but owning a car, you also have registration that you have to pay for. And you have to have, state inspections. I forgot about that too. It's insanely complicated, and then all of the time that you lose. Yeah, owning a car may cost $400 a month, now that I think about it. And when you add up all the time and everything, yeah, it takes a lot of... It's just a nightmare. They've made it so bureaucratic, it's very obvious why young people don't want to own cars. Okay, so it also can help increase the popularity of electric cars in the long run. I don't know if Uber or Lyft do this yet, but you may eventually have people who, let's say with Tesla Motors or the Nissan Leaf, say, hey, I'm an electric car driver, and whatnot. And what happens is you as the, let's say, Uber or Lyft individual want to go with someone who has an electric car. Now, I don't know if it gives people the power to do that, but for people who are environmentally conscious, what happens? Blam. they'll hop in and take a ride with the person with the electric car over an oil-based car. So it ends up rewarding electric car companies in the long run. By the way, keep in mind, this doesn't just reward millennials. If you have fewer people with cars and fewer people driving on the roads, that actually lowers the environmental impact as well. So these companies are both good for the environment. So even if governments try to ban this, as I said before, it'll just go underground, and then of course they won't make any money on tax revenues. If I was the government, I would go ahead and allow it, tax it. That's great. But this is actually a very good sign, and as you can see, with owning a car is actually very costly. Remember, that assumes no auto loan. People with auto loans, they may be paying as much as $1,000 a month to own a car. And yeah, these millennials who don't own cars and are using these car sharing services or ride sharing services, totally rational to do. It's not something that I would personally invest in. Uber or Lyft are not something that I like as investments. There are other things that I like better. But I can see why people look at this as this is definitely going to shift some of the power. It is going to take away money from a lot of the automakers. And like I said, in the long run, I think what will happen is if Uber and Lyft build their apps right, you can see an increase in popularity for riding with, let's say, an electric car. Because again, young people are more environmentally conscious. So overall, this is definitely a net positive.